Hi there. So, just wanted to give a little update. At the moment, I am parked on the PCH, engine running, about 25 miles north of Santa Cruz and about 22 miles south of Half Moon Bay. And at about 3:51 p.m. West Coast time, the Emperor Dragon pair started to expand, and it's now about 4:17, which is a little less than a half an hour, and it's already expanded 100 yards or 100 paces. So I wanted to show you when they're going straight ahead like this, that means that we're out of the energy. So we're right on the edge of the energy right now. And the bizarre thing about this, you can see how it's starting to cross. That means that the edge of the energy is moving past us. The bizarre thing about this is I dowsed earlier today to see if it was going to start to move today and what time. And it said 3:51, and exactly at 3:51 it started moving. Crazy. Now you see we're in the energy because it's crossed. All right. Now I'm going to pull the car ahead a little bit and we'll uncross. All right. And again, it'll start to cross again. As the energy moves past us. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to, hi everybody. I'm going to keep measuring this. When I checked earlier, excuse me, when I asked earlier, you can use dowsing as a divination tool. So you can ask questions, and if it's going straight ahead, it means no, and if it crosses, it means yes, or affirms whatever the question is, however you word it. And so as I said, I asked earlier, like, if it was going to start moving today, and it said yes, and if and then I said what time, and I said, is it going to start at 4 o'clock? And it said it was kind of an iffy thing. And then when I was, I gave is it going to move at 3:59, 3:58, 3:50, and then moved it down to 3:51, and at 3:51 it said yes. Okay, and then I asked, is it how much is it going to move? How much is this Emperor Dragon pair gonna, or all of them? How much are they going to expand? And it gave me a number of approximately 8 miles a day. So we'll see if that's true. But the fact that I picked 3:51 and it started moving at 3:51 I'm just blown away. So alrighty, what's this? Hello, is there somebody there? Hey Kyle, if you're still watching. Laney0608. Are we doing anything there?
Yeah, it's me. It's Elaine.
How you doing, Elaine?
Hey, good.
What's
I've
up?
been well, you know that the ley line that comes out of Jade Cove area there crosses over the Sierra is pretty close to where I live.
Really?
Um yeah, on the 395. Do you know that 395 that goes up through the Owens Valley up towards
Uh-huh.
Mammoth?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a hot springs right there and
Yeah.
the ley line.
Keogh Hot Springs. Yep. And
Yes,
the
but
center
I've
line
never.
is just south of there. Is like a
Right,
mile south of the hot spring. But it doesn't really matter anymore because that whole area is now in the swath.
because it's so wide.
Yeah. It was until about a half hour ago, it was
and it's
136
going
miles
the other
wide.
way. Gotcha. And it's going the
And
other
and
way.
now
All right.
what do you mean going the other way?
Is it getting smaller or it's moving left to
No,
right?
it's getting
Wider.
wider, it's expanding.
Okay.
Isn't that
Okay.
crazy? Is that crazy?
Yes.
I'm
I know I've
I
been watching you on this and I'm like, oh my God, it's like, what does it feel like to be right there?
honestly, I'm going to be processing the fact that I was able to predict the exact moment when it was going to move, and it moved at that
Mm-hmm.
moment. I mean, I did the check at around 1:30, so I knew
Mm-hmm.
I had like 2.5 hours to wait. So I'm
Yeah.
piddling around and everything like that, and at 3:41 I checked and it wasn't moving,
Mm-mm.
and I just happened to look up from the work I was doing, and it was 3:51, and I pulled up, and sure enough, it started moving, and I got out and I walked, and it had already gone like 50 yards, and I'm like, dang. So yeah, it's a good possibility that at the rate it's going, it could move at least 4 miles a day, somewhere between 4 and 8 miles a day. Um, So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Um, this is a good time to check this other thing. I noticed something while I've been sitting here since the full moon,
Okay.
um, checking, here since the full moon. And one of the things I discovered is that there, about 20 yards in front of the edge, there was a 20 pace wide line. And then probably, I don't know, maybe 200 yards ahead, there's another line that runs parallel as well that is about 65 paces wide. And I'm thinking that these might be rings that are part of this structure, um,
Mm-hmm.
probably part of the node.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, I can check actually right now.
Are you recording it and mapping it out and all that stuff, or you
Oh
just
hell yeah,
storing it in your head? Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I use Google Maps and
Yeah.
Google Earth and mark on there, and take screenshots and whatnot. So yeah, I've been pretty much keeping track of this, and I'm I'm amazed. I'm just this whole thing to be a have a front row seat to this whole unfolding is just
Yeah, the
it's stunning.
phenomena of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank
did
you
you have a
for sharing
question?
it for all of us. No, I just if you're ever on the other side of the Sierras, contact me and I'd be happy to meet you and just see what's going on the other side of the mountain. It
Yeah, yeah,
seems
yeah.
like you're very connected to it on the ocean, like when you were back east and then Monterey and then Big Sur. What happens when
Hmm.
you go on the other side of a mountain? What is it doing there when it doesn't
It's
have
a,
an ocean connection?
oh, it's the same. I've checked it all the way across country.
Mm,
I've dowsed that Keogh node
Well, you have.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, like 2 years ago,
Okay.
and and went to those hot springs. They're pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I, it's the same. It doesn't matter because
Where it is.
remember, this is a sound structure. This is an ultra low frequency sound wave emanating from the center point of the planet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha.
So it doesn't, it's not affected by, as far as I can tell, by magnetic fields or or anything else. So uh, in terms of its expression, although it is attracted to certain things, like I don't know if it's attracted to it or what, but there sure seem to be a lot of graveyards, especially old,
Oh, yeah, you were
old
saying that. Yeah.
graveyards that are
Yeah.
I that are set up in their vicinity, if not
Yeah.
right in the line,
Right.
um, or the nodes, um, and that's when these lines were a whole lot thinner,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
because
Yeah.
until at least 2019, they were only um, the Emperor dragons were only 50 paces wide, and there weren't any in North America. Up
Mm.
until 2017, there weren't any in North America. Between 2017 and 2019, three new pairs showed up, and two of them passed through North America.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at that time, they were only 50 paces wide. Uh, so, but it's really interesting to me. I was thinking about last summer, this time last year actually. I went um, to find where the one that go this one here that goes coast to coast from here to Virginia crosses the one that goes from pole to pole
Right.
in
Right.
Virginia.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it last night, and I realized that the very first place, so it makes this giant hashtag that's about between 40 and 50 miles square all the way around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I started in the upper left of the hashtag,
Okay.
and that place, the first place that I went to was a graveyard.
Wow. Yeah.
And there's like, I don't know, about three or four churches within a square mile of that crossing point, and some pretty old graveyards right there. There were two graveyards in the vicinity, and um, I totally forgot about that. It's like a sign that I haven't been really registering until I went to the Cape this summer,
Yeah.
and that my actual last day on the Cape, I went to the Royal, it's called the Royal Wampanoag Cemetery, which is in the node, and it's a solar node. There's four solar lines that cross there. It's the most powerful node in southeastern Massachusetts. And I think it's the reason why the natives settled there. And they're most likely, they've been there for at least 10,000 years. And it's very
Mm-hmm.
possible that the people that there are people buried in that cemetery that have been buried there for 10,000 years.
Right.
And it just so happens that I have, those are my ancestors,
Right. Right.
through my mother's side. Um, and so as I was leaving the cemetery, I followed the line south to towards the Cape, and I discovered there were five other graveyards in the vicinity that are dated at least to the colonial period,
Mm-hmm.
but pre-revolution.
Right.
And I mean that cannot be a coincidence. For one thing, it's one of the most sparsely populated parts of Massachusetts. Like there's barely anybody lives out there, but
Yeah.
there's these graveyards are packed, you know.
They
Um,
where they took them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and these are Europeans that are buried there. How did the Europeans know to be buried there?
Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
um, and then of course that there's another line that and in fact no, it is that same line. It goes to the Cape. It goes across from. Um, it actually goes by where my father's buried. My father's buried about 1,000 paces away from the line, and but it goes to another Wampanoag cemetery on the Cape, which is, once again, these folks have been living there for 10,000 years. So,
Yeah.
and I think it's the reason why they settled there is because of that node. So anyway, as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you're sharing it. Thank you for like getting on and sharing your excitement because it's very interesting and you explain it in terms that people can follow it, It's like, and then you're discovering things and you're just letting everybody know what you discover at each moment.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
it's so weird. I mean, weird. The word weird comes from it's WYRD. It's from the old German. It means that something is of the goddess or of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
And this is certainly weird. It does not get any. I think it's to say that something is metaphysical, as in beyond the physical plane of existence, because this is obviously beyond the physical plane.
Right.
And the anecdotal information that we have about this subtle energy system is that especially the nodes are places that are where the quote unquote the veil is thin between the dimensional planes, between the worlds, and that it
Right.
was easier for people to communicate with their ancestors in these places and
Yeah.
at these times, the solstices and equinoxes especially. Um,
Yeah.
and now we're beginning through this work, we're beginning to understand why. What made those particular times of the year so special, or it even possible for for our ancestors to say and to pass down the information that these times are to be noted as a time where it will be easy to communicate with the ancestors.
Yeah.
Um, and it's all because of, believe it or not, an ultra low frequency sound wave matrix that covers the planet.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that it's sound, that it's vibration, and because it's the only thing that makes sense, when you look at the movements and everything, that and as I'm doing this work, I'm constantly reminding myself or picturing, this wave of sound, of vibration coming from the core,
Right. Right.
and trying to picture like what is causing it to do what it's doing. Like why did it start moving today? Like I said, I've been sitting here on station since the full moon. I arrived on the full moon and started doing measurements, and was expecting it to move earlier. I was expecting it to move 5 days ago because that's what it did in June. It started moving 5 days before the solstice.
Mm-hmm.
But I was texting with Rory, if you know Rory
Yeah. Yeah.
McQuestion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's pretty much established that all the ley lines start to come into harmony with one, vibrating at the same frequency over the 3 days previous to leading up to the solstice or equinox. And it used to be when we first started doing these measurements, like I should say when he first started doing these measurements 12 years ago, 14 years ago, actually, about 2008, 2009, all of that would happen in the same day, right? So all the
Mhm.
ley lines would come into harmony on the same day. They'd stay vibrating in harmony all in the same day, and part all in the same day. And that day would be the solstice or the equinox. And when it did that, the slower frequencies, the emperor dragons, would speed up, and the faster ones, the earth generated ones, that would slow down, and they all kind of meet around the vibration of the solar generated ones. What has happened since then is the harmony period has expanded. The time for them to come together has expanded, so that now they're 3 days before the solstice and equinox. And the harmony period, first it was 2 days, and it was 3 days, and so forth. In June, the harmony period was 18 days. And when I checked earlier today, it's possible that it'll be 18 days again. In March, it was 15 days. So it expanded 3 days in 3 months.
Yeah.
So what's also really tripping me out about all of this is that these things don't, we're talking about geology, these
Yes.
things
No,
don't
it's a
change
science.
very
It's a science.
often,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
They change over millennia, and
Yeah.
here we're getting
Right.
to see it in such short periods of time.
Mhm.
Now, the big question is, like, why did it stop expanding when the harmony period ended on July 8th for the solstice? And why did it start today,
Right. Yeah.
with less than 3 days to go? I think the reason why it started today, the actual moment of the equinox is at 1:05 a.m. on the 23rd GMT,
Mhm.
Greenwich Mean Time.
Yeah.
Which means, on the West Coast, it's 7 hours. There's a 7 hours difference. So at 6:05 on the 22nd will be the actual moment when the sun moves into Libra, right?
Right.
And so that would have meant that last night at 6:05 would be exactly 3 days before, right?
Right.
So what I think is happening. One of the drivers of this is, so the rest of the year, all the ley lines are, they're vibrating at their own frequencies and everything. The earth generated lines are most likely vibrating between 10 and 16 hours. What that means is that they will move to the left 5 hours and then move back to the right 5 hours, or they'll move to the left for 8 hours and then move back to the right for 8 hours, and that altogether is 16 hours, right?
Mhm.
The solar lines move, most of them move 24 hours. So they'll go 12 hours to the left and 12 hours to the right. So it's an undulation.
Mhm.
The emperor dragons, 5 of them, there are 6 pairs, right? Now 6 swaths, and they move, 5 of them move, have a 48-hour period. So they move 24 hours one way and 24 hours in the other direction, right? That's their
Mhm.
undulation. Except for this one. This one has a period of 72 hours. So it takes 36 hours to move left and 36 hours to move right. We don't
Mhm.
know why.
Right.
Rory's theory is that it's the one that's generated by our galactic core. I disagree. He and I disagree on this
Mhm.
one. Both of us are kind of guessing on it. I think it's the one that goes pole to pole is actually our is actually ours, and I don't know why. I don't know why this one is 72. He could be right. I fully grant that. So we'll see. Time will tell as we get more people involved in it that have can turn over all the stones.
Well, it's a lot of data to analyze, right? It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it would be wonderful if we were able. There are six galaxies in our galactic neighborhood. It'd be wonderful to be able to identify those six. And the reason why these three new emperor dragons have shown up has to do with where the solar system is in its approximately 250 million year orbit around the center of the galaxy. In that orbit, it passes above the galactic plane and then passes below the galactic plane. So when it goes, let me see if my finger, it'll go sine, cosine, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
And it takes approximately between 70 and 80 million years to make one of those sine cosines, right? So it makes at least three of those in one rotation. And because the solar system's only existed for 5 billion years, you can count the number of times it's done that. At the moment, we are above or below, depending what your reference point is. We're not at the galactic crossing point. We're above it, and my theory is that we're passing out of a cloud of dust and gas, that it's been obscuring or keeping us obscured from these galactic sources. And so that now as we're getting into clearer and clearer space, these beams of cosmic radiation are able to focus more on us and their intensity, and we don't, there's no way to tell how much more intense it's going to get.
Right.
But what is happening is that the Earth itself it's an oblate spheroid, right? It's not a sphere; it's an oblate spheroid, which means it's flat on the top and the bottom and bulges at the edges, right?
Yeah.
So imagine you've got this sound waves emanating from the core in that oblate spheroid, right? So when they pass through the surface, they come out from under the ground, they pass the surface, they go up into the atmosphere, and some of it rebounds out into space in the same way that is projected out into space. In the same way that when you see an ocean wave hit the beach, some of that energy bounces back out to sea, right?
Right. Yeah.
The same thing happens when it leaves the surface of the Earth, right? When it moves from this being in a relatively denser form that it's passing through into the atmosphere, which is a lot less dense, right? And so some of it returns to the center.
Okay.
Right? And because it's like three new faucets turned on, between 2017 and 2019, and each time that it makes these shifts, there's more generating towards the center, right? And when it gets to the center, it interacts with what's happening at the center because it's at the same frequency. It can affect its own,
Itself. Yeah.
Exactly. But some of it will continue on to the other side of the planet, right, and bounce off of that, and so the sacred geometric sound structures become more and more intricate and more multifaceted as time goes on, right? But then you add in the fact that the 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 only thing that's changed in the subtle energy field of the planet in the past 3 years, 5 years, or whatever, since 2017, is the appearance of these emperor dragons, these 3 new sources, right? So it's like pouring a more intense substance into a container than what's already in. So let's say that container is already full of a liquid, but you pour a more, what is it, more dense liquid into it, right? There's going to come a point where the level in the container is going to rise up.
Right.
We don't know what that is, because I mean, this is an analogy for one thing, but and we're not talking about liquids, we're talking about vibration,
Waves.
right? But you get the general idea. The intensity coming from these galaxies, and the rebounding of these of all the lines is contributing to the propagation of the expansion, right? And propagation of the lines in the expansion itself. If you think about it, the Earth-generated lines don't change. The solar-generated lines don't change, right? Their sources don't change. The core of the planet, rotating against its outer core is what generates the Earth-generated lines. You know, those are the smaller ones. They're everywhere. The solar-generated lines are caused by the same thing as the galactic lines. They're caused by cosmic radiation coming from the sun, interacting with the upper atmosphere, creating these subatomic particles, what we call neutrinos, that go down through everything. And when they on the quantum level, as I've said before, everything is so far apart that hardly anything ever touches anything, right? But at the core of the planet, the densest part of our planet, enough of these subatomic particles collide with one another to create these ultra low frequency sound waves that radiate to the surface, and we experience those as this matrix of subtle energy lines, the subtle energy field of the planet, right? And right now, it's like the intensity of there's 2 things that are affecting the basic structure of the subtle energy field. One is the intensity of the cosmic radiation beams is increasing as we get into clearer space, and the other factor is what it's doing to the solar and Earth generated lines, because they're expanding as well, right? So, initially up until 2017, all the solar lines were between 10 and 30 paces wide. The ones that I've measured are 10 times that now. They're between 100 and 300 paces wide. The Earth-generated lines, I don't usually detect them, but I've detected Earth-generated lines that are 20 paces wide, and they used to be between one pace and 5 paces wide. So once again, what I think that the reason why the Emperor Dragon just started to move is because the solar and Earth-generated lines have started to move into this, have started to join the same frequency, vibrate at the same frequency. And the combination of that is what's propelling the expansion right now. It's kind of like an overflow valve in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Not a very good analogy, not a perfect analogy, but I think you get my
Yeah,
drift.
yeah.
Yeah,
They all affect each other, so that's what
yeah.
happens.
And
Yeah.
and so we've got this container, the Earth,
Mm-hmm.
as this giant bell, right? And
Yeah.
right now it's being rung, Jack. It is being rung. And remember, this isn't a one and done situation. These are standing waves of energy. A standing wave of energy is anything you can point to, right? It's
Right. Right.
anything solid is a standing wave,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I was, up until an hour ago, now it's 4:52, so yeah, exactly an hour ago.
Right.
Um, this up until then, there was a standing wave of energy that was the node, the
Mm-hmm.
Monterey node,
Right.
right there. But
Mm-hmm.
now that standing wave is fluid, right? It's
Mm-hmm. Right.
it's in motion.
Right.
So friggin' exciting.
Love when you hold up the dowsing sticks. It's like it makes whoever's watching you feel like they're there. It's one thing for you to explain it, but when you're watching them move, you feel like you're there, and you're like, "Look, when I go forward, it does this. Look, when I go backwards, it's just like, oh my
Yeah,
God!" You make people feel like they're there experiencing it
yeah,
because
yeah. Wonderful.
such a physical thing to watch. I think that's really cool when you do that.
I'm glad.
Hmm.
Thanks for the feedback because
Yeah.
I'm like, you know I I'm like, how can I show people this? You know what I
I
mean?
know.
How
See,
can
I was
I?
like, you were live, and I was like, wait a minute, you got to know somebody is sitting here almost as excited as you are watching this, even though I'm not there.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
wonderful. It's
that's really
wonderful. It's
cool.
wonderful. Thanks
Yeah.
for the feedback. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go because
Yeah.
it's
You
an
got to keep
hour. I'm
going, do
gonna
your stuff.
go see where how far it went in an hour.
Okay.
And
Sounds good. Thank you for spending time with all of us.
you bet, you bet.
Yeah.
Anytime. And
All right.
anybody have any questions, just feel free to DM me. So,
Yeah. I'll let
all
them.
right.
Okay. All right. See you. Bye, David.
Bless.